from All Saints Anglican Church, who are especially Millie's big fans from All Saints Church and from other churches too, First Reformed, and so we are one big happy family here today. And I am very much looking forward to sharing fascinating new Bible study insights and ways to understand our scriptures better, and how I and Millie and I have been discovering this together. Okay, I'm asking, does anybody ever struggle to understand the imagery in the Bible? You know, like why is leaven so terrible? You know, what is all this thing? Polygamy, sacrifice, what on earth is going on here? Well, I, like many of you, as I grew up in the Lutheran Church. My name is Lois Terberberg. I'm the other person, not Millie. I came to Holland, Michigan in 1995 with a PhD in biology to teach about our at Hope College in the biology department. And I, like you, like all of us, wished I understood my Bible better. Okay? Like most of us, I have been very curious about understanding the context, the cultural context. I think if you live in Holland, Michigan, you might have heard of this fellow named Ray Vander Laan. How many of you have heard of Ray Vander Laan? Okay, yes. And for some of you who haven't met me yet, I was so fascinated with cultural context that I left my world of teaching biology in order to write about it, and so I started writing books right there, like sitting at the feet of Rabbi Jesus, his first century Jewish context. If you understand the world around him, you understand the Bible better, okay? And so I started writing and have been doing that for the past 25 years now, okay? Well, at the same time, a bunch of friends of mine and I started a ministry where we had a Bible study that we were doing a crazy thing. We were going to read through the Torah together. That's what Jewish people do. Even though as a Lutheran, I said, ew, I don't want to read that part. And so, we accidentally happened to have, there was a new fellow, he had just arrived from Uganda at our church, and we invited him to join us. This is Titus Baraka, and you folks from Pillar might recognize he was the one who was preaching about a month ago here. He joined our Bible study, kind of thinking we were nuts, didn't understand why we were doing that, and within about a week or two, he was our most valuable commentator because he kept pointing out things to us. And then I got to know Titus well, and went to and got to know another one of our Ugandan students who came over to study at Western Seminary, and her name was Millie Arima, and we invited her to come with us to Israel in 2005. And so this is ancient times, Millie. So Millie, I don't see our handouts around. We'll see if we get a handout around, but Millie, my friend here, is Western Seminary's Distinguished Graduate of 2023. I'm highly honored to be working, and I'm hosting her here at my home. So, and you're going to find out how cool Millie is over this presentation. What happened is that as we were studying and teaching about Jesus in his first century Jewish context, and we were reading his scriptures, our Old Testament, the part I didn't really understand very well at all, as we kept talking about these things, our Ugandan friends kept saying, yeah, this makes much more sense than what we used to learn in seminary when we were studying it the regular old way where we weren't understanding about the Jewish context. And so our Ugandan friends kept being our best commentators. Why on earth is that? I don't know. Well, I'm going to let Millie talk to you a little bit about why she might be a very good commentator. Why don't you take this, Millie?
Praise the Lord.
Praise God.
I'm really thankful that my friend Lois could organize this and we could talk together about some few things, because you're free to ask me questions if you feel you don't understand a thing. Something which may be an impediment between me and you in communication is my accent. My accent is not the American accent. I'm an African. My people are called originally the Bari. The legends tell us that actually they came from among the Fulani people of Nigeria. They were cattle keepers, and when the population there grew, our people decided to march on because of conflicts on grazing land. They marched on and they came up to not just going straight, but settling on the way for some time and so on, until they came and settled at the foot of the Ethiopian highlands in the kingdom of Kush. And they stayed there for a long time, until also their population grew, and then they also started having fights on grazing lands, and that forced some of them to come southwards along the Nile Valley. They followed along the Nile Valley up to when they arrived in the Nuba Mountains. If you know Nuba Mountains, then part below that mountain is the Lui Mountain in, I would say, eastern Sudan. And the name changed to Lubare because we were the people who, my ancestors were the people who settled by the Lui Mountains. That's where the Bari from Lui Mountains. So from there, the Arabs, I think, taking over the Sudan and so on, life became difficult and my people decided to leave. They didn't all come. You will still find the Bari have remained in the Sudan, but those who were specifically under the Lui Mountains, they took off and came down, still in the Kush, the kingdom of Kush, down until they arrived in northern Uganda, where my people have settled up to today. Northwestern Uganda, the extreme tip.
And I don't know, we really have much more to do. We can't do much more of this. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and then that is where we are, a small group of cattle keepers who have lost all their cattle in the wars, and we are now farmers.
So, Millie, okay, see that lake there in the green section? That is Lake. What's the lake? Billy, what's the lake there in that green section? Okay, okay. Millie comes from the south part of the Kushites. They're actually like biblical peoples. You're talking to a biblical person right now. And that's kind of my main point. And I feel like I am being a obnoxious Westerner in taking over my friend's presentation, but we weren't intending on giving you the entire background of where her people come from. But Millie, you go. It's fine.
Yeah, thank you for the words.
So, okay. Here, we'll keep going. Okay, and so I need to tell you a little bit more about Millie's story. And I'm going to defer, you can talk. Okay, but Millie came in 2000, same as John Brown was starting seminary. And she had Tom Bogart's Old Testament class. And Tom, when he was teaching about the strange scene, we'd say is like 3,000 years ago when Abraham, he says to Abraham in Genesis 15, bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat, ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon, and he brought all him these and cut them in half, and he laid each half over against each other. And the sun went down and it got dark, and a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. And on that day, he made a covenant with Abraham. And so that's a strange, unusual scene that seems so odd. Millie, what happened? Yes.
Yeah, I think when Westerners read such a passage, they wonder what is this all about. I know many of you might not have slaughtered animals or even seen animals being slaughtered. And my people, I feel sometimes nervous when I say my people, because for us we are a communal people. We say our people, our people. Our people have done such sacrifices, especially when they are making a covenant. And for us, it's not even making a covenant. You cut a covenant with the other person or the other community. And when you are cutting a covenant, you slaughter animals. Much of our covenants are done around slaughtering animals and using their blood or using their flesh. So in this story, why my people will do this is because a covenant is binding the two people or the two communities that are cutting this covenant. And when Abraham did this and slaughtered the animals and cut them into two and laid them side by side, to my people it means one part of the animal, one half of the animal represents Abraham, then the other half of the animal represented God, because this covenant was between God and Abraham. So it depends on the magnitude the importance or the essence of the covenant, and how much you have to offer in your place to cut such a covenant. So Abraham had to take when you say he took a young animals, because you don't cut a covenant with an old shrink, or it means it makes the covenant not of importance. You cut that which is young, not very young, not kids of animals or calves, but that which is ready for slaughter. That which is ready for slaughter, it is tender. It's the one which gives the best meat. Those are the ones you pick for covenant and sacrifice. So Abraham lying there to wait upon God passing through this covenant, these sacrifices. The small ones, you can't cut them into two. You put them side by side. I can still remember my grandfather cutting the heads off from chicken and laying them so that people can pass through them. I can still remember those images. And God was supposed to, if this covenant has to be ratified, it means God has to pass through these animals. And then Abraham has to lie there to see truly whether God passed through these animals, so that he will say, yes, this covenant has been cut. So he lays there, the sun sets, still God has not come. But he makes sure they are not made unworthy by animals coming to, eat on them, or birds coming to. He has to chase them away to keep them clean and pure for God to pass through them. So as he lay there, he being tired the whole day waiting on the person with whom they are cutting the covenant, he dozes, falls asleep and so forth. But he comes in the night and sees that God is real, God has come. He sees a part with fire flaming in it, passing through the covenant. And the essence of this, even cutting of these animals, is that if you fail to keep your part of the covenant, it means you will die. You will die, and you will also be cut into two. Your death will be a scary, a bad death, where you are split into two, like these animals which have been split into two to represent you and the person with whom you are cutting a covenant. So because my people did this, for me it's not something like, no, this was just a story which has no sense. Why should God pass through this? God passes through this because God is also pledging an oath. By me passing here, I will not break my covenant with him.
Yeah. So Millie has family who have done this. So Tom Bogart's like, what? I thought there was something that happened thousands of years ago. I'm like, no, we used to do this. This is the kind of thing that we kept saying. And so, Tom Bogart used to say, wow, Millie reads the Bible like an insider. And so this is kind of fascinating. Our other Ugandan friends, they have insights, but Millie also now she has a PhD in Old Testament. She's been teaching at Uganda Christian University for 20 years. And she's gotten extra good at this. And so she was here a couple years ago to have medical treatment for some thyroid cancer. And I said, hey, why don't we go to the meeting I always go to? It's the Society for Biblical Literature. These are the academic meetings with the best people in the business who write the textbooks. And we went to this session with Old Testament professors. We were sitting around a big long table, and they were having a session called Difficult Texts of the Old Testament. And these are the guys who write the textbooks. And they're sitting there going, we don't understand this one. So, and Millie and I, we both kind of sat down kind of independently. We didn't realize she was in there. And they were reading a very puzzling text from Genesis 9. And if you can see I don't think you can see the picture, that's okay. It's from the life of Noah. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. He drank some of its wine. He became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his brothers outside, his two brothers. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backwards and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." Is that just not a puzzler text? And all of these Old Testament, and so Millie said quietly to them, go ahead.
Yeah, I marveled when everybody in the house really were not happy that Noah will curse Canaan. Well, Canaan is not the one actually who saw his father's nakedness. Why? This is not right. This is not just. People were talking about injustice and so on, and claiming that because of that, even the African Americans are the descendants of maybe Canaan, and their suffering here is acceptable because they were already cast. You know, those were the arguments there. I listened to this, I just marveled. I said, wow, how the Bible is read backwards here, not as it stands. Then I told them that Noah was right to curse Canaan because in my culture, a son represents his father. He's the heir, a representative of the father. And Noah would not now curse Ham because Ham has already finished his life. Once your son is born and grown, really you finish your life. Your life is replaced by the one of your son, and then your son stands in your place. When I introduce myself to you, I'll say, I am Mary, the daughter of Joseph, and he comes from this clan, and you know. And so I introduce myself by the community from which I come, but my father's name comes because I'm representing my father here.
No, but
So-
what's the problem? I mean, just because he accidentally saw it, what's the problem with seeing him uncovered?
When Ham goes to, first of all for us, when you were growing up, you don't go to your father's bed. You don't go to his tent unless you're invited. And his father lay there drunk, and Ham went and looked at his father's nakedness without any invitation. It means Ham really has characteristic problems, so bad manners. And looked at the father and didn't even keep quiet. You're not supposed to talk about the private things of your parents. He didn't keep quiet. He ran out and broadcasted it to the people, his brothers. And everybody heard. And that was really, really humiliating your father. He said, see, my father lies there naked. Means he saw everything. He saw everything. He saw his father's, private parts. He saw them. And that is really an abomination in your society. It's an abomination. You don't see somebody even naked unless if you have sexual
But you said something earlier, so he shouldn't even have been inside.
That's right, yes.
So he was in there inappropriate. I mean, just-
That inappropriate,
Yeah.
that's right.
There is sexual overtones
Yeah.
in that whole idea. Yeah.
Because he was in there, he shouldn't have seen what he saw, and then he went and told others.
Yeah.
That's right.
So in that culture, especially, I mean, that'd be bad in our culture, but especially bad in that culture. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. So that's why more than cast Canaan, because Canaan is a growing representative of this man with inappropriate behavior. So for our culture, you will also say, like father, like son, maybe Canaan also had those characteristics. And now when he cast him, it continued with him. It continued with him. That's why later in the Bible we will come to find that Canaanites are these people who are prostitutes and have those inappropriate behaviors and so on. So the curse was on Canaan because Canaan is the representative, the direct representative of his father.
Okay,
And
interesting.
so basically he's saying, Canaan can't represent,
Well,
or Ham can't represent, right?
it's actually no, well, it's more almost, things in Genesis often are pointing ahead at what's going to happen. And so the Hamites or the Canaanites, of course, are going to be the enemies. You notice how they're often sexually assaulting Israelites. Think ahead to all of the various places where Abraham takes his Sarah and then they want her. You know, every place you go, the Canaanites are after you sexually. So this kind of points ahead at what's going to happen in the rest of the Bible, and that's what Millie sees right here. So, yes, can I keep, Millie and I are always talking about how Americans have impatience, and I know that you folks we could go forever, and it would be great. You will be amazed, but we must hold on to some of those things. Okay. And the very fact that you're saying it's normal still in your culture for parents to curse their children.
They do.
And it means it has great they take it really seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
we have to then maybe sometimes when you say, wow, my father cursed me, this is following me, maybe then you call the priests today for Christians to go and break those curses with the scripture and prayer. It can even be prayer with fasting for weeks and so on. Yeah.
okay, so a different world than we live in, right? Interesting. Okay, and here's so Millie has joined my Bible study for years, and we were studying Deuteronomy. And the hardest text I think we have in the Torah, and some of the laws that were kind of, wow. Here's one that was really tough on us. It's, if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline will not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall bring him to the elders of his city, and they shall say, this is our son is stubborn and rebellious, he will not obey our voice. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So, what changed? What was the reality that this was speaking into, that it was pushing back on? Like, what would happen if this wouldn't be true?
A rebellious son. You know, in communities where people live in communities, there's supposed to be no rebellion. A rebellious son is a seed that can spoil many other children. Not only you look at him as an individual, but you look at the effect of his behavior on the younger generation. So normally in communities, this kind of a child will not be acceptable. And then it's the responsibility of the parents.
Which parent? Which parent?
Father and mother.
Are you sure?
To correct this child. But if they fail to correct this child, the child is maybe a glutton, is a drunkard, is a drug taker, and so on. They have tried to warn him. They have tried to call the elders, village elders, to talk to him, and he is not refrained. So the child will be taken in public. Most of the things are done from within the family, but when it goes out of hand, the child will be taken to the public arena.
Can I point out a thing that you said in our private Bible study? It's usually the man, and he can do anything he wants to. And the wife, if she says something about to defend her child, she'll get punished just like this child. Can you talk about the difference? And the default would have been that the man can discipline his son up to killing him. Anything he wants to. But yet now we have the voice of the mother here. So
yeah, actually, when it comes to killing, there needed to be both voices, because it's believed that the mother actually is the one who raised this child. And every bad behavior of a child will be blamed on the wife. You didn't bring up this child well. You didn't bring up, but for punishment, it is true. The father is responsible to discipline the children in the household. and the father has the upper hand in every decision concerning the children in his household. Not only his household, even in his brothers in the community households, because a father is a father to all children there. But in the case of execution, the father's testimony will not be acceptable until the wife says, yes, we have tried, we have failed. That's why he has to accompany. Otherwise, if he goes alone, people will say, we've not heard from the child's mother, so we can't execute him. But then, the mother may turn around. You handed my son to be killed. My son was not this bad as you think. And so to avoid those circumstances, the mother has to accompany her son to the execution, to give her testimony that I did my part, but I failed.
Right.
Even when the man will have the upper hand in punishment and doing whatever he wants with his children, deciding everything, but when it comes to execution, the one who gave birth and brought up this child has a voice.
And this is surprising. We often are talking about that women have no voice in the Bible. The Bible oppresses women, but instead, this is pushing back on the power that normally is given to the father. And it's taking, as much as it sympathizes with the anger of the parents with their children, it's ultimately taking the power away from the parents to make the decision and in the ultimate punishment here. You must take into it reminds, there's this other law that's a very ancient, if you have a blood avenger, somebody kills, if you have even an accident and you drop your axe on a person and they die, the blood avenger will come after you from that family. But they decided to set up these cities of refuge so that you don't just have the angry family coming to chase you down. You go to where the Levites are and they have a trial to decide whether you did it in vengeance or not. And this, I would say, this seems very like that. You've got probably angry parents, especially a mad dad. And this is saying, maybe we take the decision out of your hands. Your wife has to weigh in, the whole community has to weigh in before such a decision should be made. So ultimately I found that it's like a progressive decision. Millie commented that in some communities, even now, this cannot be put in place because it feels so liberal that a man cannot discipline his children the way he really wants to. Sorry, I'm only quoting what she said before. So anyhow, okay. And I know we're trying to we have many cool things, but okay, how many know what the Shema is? Okay, some people know, not everybody. This is the Jewish, you could call it their Pledge of Allegiance, they say every morning. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. And of course, that's the greatest commandment. It goes on, there are more parts to it. And the next part starts with, and you see Travis back there, he knows it in Hebrew. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And, okay, part of it is like, what's about this? When you walk along, talk about this, Millie.
I always marvel at the American families where the children have their own rooms. Everybody has their own cars, and then you drive wherever you are going, and you come back, and then you enter in your little room, you are alone. I don't know how you teach your children your faith. I don't know. Whether you do it and how you do it, I don't know. Because for us, really we do everything together. We don't have cars. If we have to travel a journey, we walk together. And as we walk, we talk. Many times we talk our history, our tribal history or family history to our children as we travel with them. And as Christians, we talk about our faith, what we believe, and how we believe it, and how we have to walk our walk in this faith. As we walk, maybe we are going for firewood, to fetch firewood, and we talk about these things. And maybe we are going to fetch water, as you have seen. These are my students of King. Actually, our well broke, and these have been my chances. Unfortunately, this picture was taken when I had already come here. That's, I think, last week. And I will walk with them. They don't walk alone. If they had made some, you will find there is a teacher with them here. So we walk with them. And as we walk with them, we discuss with them either faith issues, we discuss with them maybe subject issues, with majorly behavioral issues. How then do you behave in this world which is changing and turning everything upside down? What is it in the scriptures that you have to follow when you look at, when you are facing these kind of challenges of maybe homosexuality, LGBTQ, and so as we walk, because these things are not in the curriculum, we walk and we talk with our children. So walking is what builds you, walking together is what builds you stronger. In times of need, you are many walking together. You defend one another. And as you talk together, you share your mind with the other person. So you influence the other person as you walk together. As you walk together, you point the harmful things along the way and in life. But here, I don't see that. Sometimes I look through them. I come and stand at Lois' door and look on the road. Nobody. I just see cars passing. I say, how do they pass on their lives to the other person? At home, they are different rooms. Praise God in Elizabeth house for Jonathan, who runs everywhere.
One big room with Jonathan. Yes, great. And how much? Millie said that the town near where she lives is 25 miles, and they would walk it in one day. Walk, do their business, and walk home.
And you can't walk alone. It's difficult walking alone.
Dangerous.
Long distance and dangerous. So you walk with people. You walk and come back. Even right now, when I'm home, we go to the market together. We go to the market. We select the able-bodied people who can carry luggages on their heads, and we walk with them. And we go and ask prices of things. As we walk, we talk. That's how we build on the lives of the people.
So instead of getting into your minivan, her children are her minivan. They walk behind her and she carries stuff on their heads. That's how she carries stuff. Yes. Okay. So, okay. And what's interesting is that a lot of the images in the Bible that are like, we don't know what that means. I think you've heard of it, winnowing. You ever heard it? The wicked are like the chaff that the wind blows away, and his winnowing fork is in his hand. This is what John the Baptist says about Jesus. He will clear his threshing floor and gather his wheat into the barn and burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. Well, when I was in Uganda a couple of years ago, Millie has coffee trees, and she picked fresh coffee beans, let them dry, and they have a hull around the outside. And she was showing me, see, this is what real coffee comes in. You look real close. You see, these are the little unroasted little nibs right here. See? Okay, but they all have all of these little holes around them. And so in order to, and so she's just doing it a little bit here. So, okay, and so we brought along for you to show her.
Most winnowing trays are like this. We don't have a thing like a tray in our mother tongue or in our culture, but it's something similar to this, but wider. And when you have little, maybe grain to winnow, you will use this, you shake it up in the air with both hands, of course, like this. And then as the wind will be taking out the chaff. But if it's a big heap, like you are threshing corn, and maybe what we call sorghum or millet, even rice, you beat it, then it leaves you a big heap. So what you do is with this winnowing tray, you scoop and you stand on a raised ground so that the wind is blows more strongly when you are up. So you hold it like this. You keep slowly and slowly letting it down. You'll find the really grain falls here. Then the chaff is blown by the wind as you do that. Or you scoop it and then you do that. And you'll find that as you throw it up and it falls, the chaff will be blown and the grains remain here. So that is, then when you compare the Lord coming to winnow, the people, the church, we are here in church, some of us, unfortunately, will be chaff and will be blown off. And then some of us who have content and they are waiting, they will remain the Lord's treasured harvest. Unfortunately, it talks about us too. So I always tell my children, let me go home and winnow so that I can see how God will be winnowing us, and I do it. Then my children say, Mom, that is primitive. We don't talk about those things anymore. I'll tell them it's right there in scriptures, and if I have to understand my scripture properly, I better hold on to these things which you think are primitive. So that's always our fun at home.
I should say, Millie's, oh, here, this is yours, sorry. Millie's grandmother wore grass skirts and not much on top. The Lukbara people were some of the very last people contacted by Westerners, and so to her it's fresh. Her own grandparents know very well. Her mom is still around, and yet her own children are like, oh, Mom, so old. And so Millie has this fascinating, crucial, I asked her about levirate marriage. That's when a man dies and the brothers will take on his wife and marry her. And she, oh yeah, and so she, on WhatsApp, she went and called up her uncle, who's a villager, an elder, and so he's explaining to her the traditions according, and so she can touch right back into the ancient knowledge of her people whenever we have Bible study discussions. So,
yeah,
yes.
I always tell Lois I walk backwards, because when I hit a scripture and I think, this one sounds like my people did it and I saw it, then I walk backwards. To them I ask them, how did you do it? And what was the significance? I find out from their perspective that when I come to read the Bible, I really find that, yes, these are similar things, similar practices. Even in times of plagues, I don't know how you would call them, even the slaughtering of animals and putting the blood on the doorpost and doorway so that to protect the family from the plague entering to afflict the people inside. I still remember myself, I think I was, I don't know how old, walked over that blood as entering in and believing that we are protected by the blood of this animal.
You haven't told me that one recently. Wow, she has all sorts of fascinating things. And so, okay, I'll give you another scratch. If you had, you probably, you'll talk at the, no, sorry. I don't want to, this is part of my American way, just as I talk on top. So, okay, here's a head scratcher. At least to me, when I was 5 or 6 years old, we would, we bought our Wonder Bread. We had a little box where we put it every day, and I used to wonder, why do we keep praying for daily bread when it's sitting there? And so I asked Millie, well, they have this is chapati, a different kind of bread, but what does it mean to you to say, give us our daily bread?
I think this is a joke we've always had with my American friends, and I cannot understand why we say this prayer in America. Because in the families I live, I've visited and I've stayed in, you find when you go to get something in the fridge is filled with all kinds of goodies. Whatever you want is there. And some of them even get spoiled there. They don't even know. There was a time I was looking for a baking flour, and my host says, it's right there behind the fridge. And when I got the things there, some had expired 2 years ago.
Unimaginable where she comes from.
And then I'm saying, really? For me, where I come from, it's a place which suffers famine every year. Because rains come once a year, and that's it. When this year the rain is not adequate enough to grow food, you are sure of famine next year. You're sure of famine. And it happens every time. And now the lands are being overused, and you find that even the productivity of the land is very low. And the yields are very minimal. And because of that, yearly when you go, I'm sorry to say some visitors may visit us in Uganda, but let it not be June, July, August, or late May, you will starve to death. Because those are our famine years. After your harvest around November, December, and it was a small yield, and it's all eaten up, then from those months, there is nothing. People even die. They die of famine. So those are the times you really say, Lord, every morning as you pray, as you wake up, give us today our daily food. Because you don't even know where the next meal is coming from. Other people even sleep, they boil. That time mango fruits are still small, they are still growing up. And they will pick them, boil them, and take them as porridge for the daily. But if you really want good food, the bread, the sauce, then you have to pray and trust God. So for us, that is a meaningful, maybe Israel was like our place where production is minimal and things are scarce when Jesus taught this prayer. But for an American, I don't know. Do you really say this prayer meaningfully? Give us today our daily food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thing to think about. And I just want to point out that last week when we were talking about Ruth, and they said it says the Lord had been, Ruth and Naomi had gone to Moab, but then it says the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Lechem, it means bread is a reference to all food. And so once again, famine hit. You have to go find some food somewhere, and so look how common it is. And so,
You go and eat in restaurants.
Yes.
You go and feast there, but how do you pray this prayer? And what does it say to you? For me, I know it's the Lord who provides the day, the meal for the day.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. So, it related to this is an interesting question. It's our final thing we're going to talk about before you can ask questions yourself. But, okay, I like going to the bridge, the fun, cool, and there were some cool sculptures here by an artist in Burkina Faso. And I had to ask Millie, which of these two ladies is more beautiful, in your opinion?
Yeah, I struggle with people here who wants to be so thin. They call it skinny. I'm just like, this woman here
On the right?
on my right really is so ugly. She's skinny. She's about to die. She's starving. So starving that she really needs help to put on some more weight. For us, this is the most ugly person because you've seen struggling feminist people, so thin, so shriveled. But Americans want to be like that. Are you sure? With all this plenty God has blessed you, you have to be fed. You have to grow more cheeks. You know, we call them mango cheeks. You have to grow mango cheeks. And that's how, for us, it's beauty. It's a sign of blessedness. I go like this in Uganda, they say, oh, you are still suffering. God has not even come to your help because you are so thin. They will think, me too, a professor would be really, and others are, yes, they eat well, they are huge, they move with a lot of weight around them, but you see me, Millie, you walk as if the wind is going to blow you away. This is not good. You are sick, you are weak, you are not strong enough. But this woman is a sign of blessedness. The Lord has visited her. And she has enough to eat, plenty to eat, and she's very healthy, very fat, showing to people how blessed she is. This tummy, when it's filled, it's a sign of blessedness. But when it goes deep down, you are not blessed at all. You are hungry. You really need to add on. So beauty for us shows blessedness of God. When God blesses you with plenty, you are beautiful. You are not ugly. But here, when God blesses you with plenty, you say you are ugly. You want to go fasting, feminist, so that you become as thin as an unblessed person. So I don't understand. I don't understand. And the thing, even the biblical mind is blessedness is shown in how healthy you look like, how fat, yes, you look like.
Here, I just want to show you. Remember when in Solomon he's praising the most beautiful woman? Her belly is a heap of wheat. So all of us need to have more of a heap of wheat on our. There you go. Just trying to.
I don't know how we read the scriptures here, but are we reading them backwards? I don't know.
Here, let me show you another. I think you might recognize this. Remember the Daniel Plan by Rick Warren? And he's using the book of Daniel. There's at the beginning of the book, Daniel, he wants to be faithful to the Lord, so he and his friends do not eat at the king's banquet table where there will be meat and wine, but they eat only vegetables. And the miracle was that they were healthier and better are nourished, okay? But I gotta explain, this is the NIV, that's how they translate it to make it sound better to you. You know what it really says? Literally it says, fatter in flesh. The miracle was they became fatter in flesh than the men who ate from the king's banquet table, because that's what they wanted to be. And what I find ironic about that is that we're writing books in order to diet, when the point is that they're trying to gain weight. And so what's ironic is that we're actually reading the Bible upside down from its own point. It wants to say one thing and we're reading it upside down and looking for the opposite thing, which I find, what I have said is that it gives you some perspective. Thank you, Lord, that we have been put into a good place in our world, but it also tells you that we have moved very far away from the reality of the people who its original intended audience is. And so when we talk to our friends, maybe they live geographically close by, but many people in the global south, around the world, understand this much better from us. And so here I'll end with, there's Eugene Nida. He was the president of the United Bible Society, and he was in charge of all these Bible translation projects. And you might think, how on earth do you take this obscure book that we have a hard time understanding ourselves and then translate it for people around the world? How on earth, why isn't everybody confused by, that just that one little place in the Middle East that we should be able to understand that? And Nida said, oh, no, the Bible is really easy, especially the Old Testament, to translate for most people in the world. And what he says is, the reason why is because if one were to compare the culture of the Bible with those of all the existing cultures today, one would find that in certain respects the Bible is closer to many of them than to our own. It's the Western culture, the Americans and the Europeans and the moderners with all their technology. It's precisely in the Western world that the scriptures have seemingly the least ready acceptance. Okay? So my suggestion, what I would like to point out, you remember Ivan Akansima, we have our international guests, invite them to your Bible studies and chat with them and see if they don't have interesting perspectives that might help you. Not that you think that they're right straight out of the Bible, you wouldn't necessarily think so, but what I've found is that it's been immensely enriching, that I've, especially Millie, because she's an expert on the Old Testament, but I want to point out the amazing, fascinating things you can learn when you have international perspective and learn from your guests, especially from Uganda.